357 SIG has a reputation of being a pain in the ass to reload. Though I wouldn't say it's totally unfounded, it's also not a prerequisite, and as I'll demonstrate, it's really not as involved as one might think. And how I start off with, once I have my once fired brass, I use a lead universal decapping die, decap it, and then I'll run it through the ultrasonic cleaner. The main benefit in doing it that way is it gets the primer pockets clean. That way you don't have to go back and mechanically be a scraping to remove the fouling. It's already done for you. Now, as far as the first step is to size the brass. Now, as far as trimming or anything, I don't trim it unless it appears that the case may be attempting to split. Then I'll square it back up and trim it. If anything, I may use a deburring and slightly bevel the inside of the case, but not to the extent that it creates a scissor edge. Now, as far as sizing die, I size the brass in two stages. The first stage, I use a 40 caliber carbide sizing die. Now, the purpose of that is twofold. A, you don't have to use a lubricant on the brass, and then second of all, I can just dedicate the actual 357 sizing die to just bumping back the shoulder the minimum amount necessary, and not have to depend on that die to do the actual sizing. So that is accomplished by the 40 carbide die. As far as setting it up, if I had enough threads on here, I'd set it where it would just barely kiss the shell plate when the ram's in the up position. But unfortunately, in this configuration, there's not enough threads unless I remove the locking ring. So it's just, I hadn't measured or anything, but it's just barely above the shell plate. Now, that's pretty straightforward. Now, setting this to the minimal, to get minimal sizing, just enough to serve its purpose. Now, in all actuality, if you want to bottom it out where it touches the shell plate, it's just going to slightly oversize the brass. Nothing catastrophic is going to happen. It just doesn't, you don't necessarily have to take it to that extreme. So, when not having a gauge, any type of headspace gauge, how I went about determining how far back to push the shoulder, if you take your once fire brass, it's going to stand a little bit proud of the breech end of the barrel right here. That's because there's a little bit of play between the breech end of the barrel and the breech face. Ideally, if you're just eyeballing it, it's easy just to bump the shoulder back enough to where it sits flush with there. Any further than that, you definitely know it serves no purpose. Now, being able to actually measure it, if we take this once fired case, you're looking at about 3 thousandths past zero on the Hornady comparator gauge. So just as you would a rifle cartridge, minimally bumping back the shoulder would mean you bump it back about 3 thousandths. So sometimes it comes out to exactly 3 thousandths that it's able to get bumped back. Sometimes it's 2, 1, sometimes it's 4 or 5. It's just, it's not a science. And then also, I do just the sizing and the priming in the one stage. So if we actually take a reading now, it should be reading about 3 thousandths less, which will put it at 0 on the dial or just before. and this is reading just before 0. So you'd have to assume it bumped it back about almost 4 thousandths. Like I said, not each cartridge is going to differ just a little bit. Well, this one's just same thing. So that'll work. Like I said, if you want to bump it back further, it's certainly not going to hurt anything. Just for an example, here's a factory federal cartridge. Obviously, commercial rounds are sized to accommodate the tightest tolerances. So you're looking at 76 thousandths. So you're looking at about 23 thousandths less further. And let's see how that would look in the barrel. It's hard to tell, but it's definitely just a little bit below the breech end. Here's a spear gold dot. It's pretty much measuring the same. Like I said, commercially speaking, they're sizing it to accommodate the most extreme of circumstances. But as a reloader, we don't have to make that accommodation. So once I'm happy with the sizing process, get this out of the way. Now, as far as setting it up in the next stage, we're going to expand. The expander is going to be in the first stage. Now, when it comes to expander, it's set up just to expand, not to the extent of where it actually flares the case mount. Now, obtaining that step on the reading is pretty simple. Now, if you have something like a Lee powder through die, it's not exactly going to work. You'd have to modify the process. But how I've got this set, I've got a once fired shell casing, not size, but just once fired and clean. Now, I don't use a size casing because it's still going to drag on the expander. Being once fired, it's not going to drag on the expander, and I'll dial down the expander until I feel it hit where it's got the shoulder on the expander. See, I can. It's now the shoulder to flare the case is just making contact with the case mount. So I'll back it off a turn or two. Well, not a turn or two, about half a turn, 3/4 of a turn, just so the shell casing, be sure it clears the expanding part. Not the expanding part, but the flaring shoulder on the expander. That way I know it's not expanding it, it's not flaring it, it's just expanding the case mount. Bullet seating die. I'm actually going to back this out a little bit. I'm going to start a little long powder measure. Currently I'm using Hodgdon's long shot. For the longest time I used Blue Dot. Blue Dot wasn't always in stock, so I want to say it was Underwood. One of those boutique cartridges reportedly was using long shot in the 357, so I decided to give it a try. So just to verify my throw, we're on the money. All right, here's a major component that may jack up your process, and that's choosing the correct bullet. When I say correct bullet, using a full metal jacket, not plated, not coated. And this is RMR, Rocky Mountain Reloading. This is their 124 grain round nose flat point 355. It's advertised in their 9mm selection. It's advertised in their 357 section also. So, and the price is $82 per 1,000. So even looking at extreme plated bullets, even they're just standard plating, you're not, that's $82 shipped too. So even if you're looking at extreme, which is a popular bullet, which I've seen people use, and they mentioned that it's cost effective, actually it's not that much more, it's not that much cheaper than using a RMR, truly full metal jacket bullet. So hey, you don't have to worry about keeping the velocity down, and then second of all, it's easier to seat in the brass without expanding it. So you got the expander, which is not set up to flare the brass. It's just to expand the mouth once it's been sized. And then you got your long shot powder measure, and then we'll have the bullet seating. So remember, I didn't flare the case. There's no flare in these cases at all. Now, if you try to automate the process, I'm not going to guarantee it's going to work. So you learn how to feel the bullet and then slowly guide it in. And guess what? It didn't crunch the case. And guess what? It didn't seat back too. Somewhere that felt like there's a split case somewhere. But I don't see it. Uh-oh. I miscounted on the bullets. Or did I? That's my issue. Now, before I get too further along, normally I'd get the bullet seating dial dialed in. Now I know the semi spec says max case overall length is 1140. Well, for me, really, this determines my max overall length, and I say that because my regular 229, 226 magazines will accommodate bullets seated out to approximately 1155, 1160. This generally has this is the limiting factor. This will not accept cartridges that long. So I've just got it. See, this is too long. Yeah, that's way too long. So, I mean, you're looking at 1190 right here. So it needs to be closer to 1155. See, we're at 1160. $11.55. Let's see what that gets us. So we'll take a sample of these, bump them back to 11.55. Actually, they seem to be functioning at 11.55. For good measure, I'll take it back just a couple more thousands. Probably looking at 11.50. $11.52. Doggone it. $11.49, $11.47. I forget what. $11.50. $11.54, $11.53. Like I said, the main goal, as long as they feed in the magazine, that's in the, this is a P239 magazine. As long as it feeds in that magazine, it'll feed in the rest of mine. Meaning the 229, the 226, and even the Glocks, it'll feed. So there you go. Guess what? All right, this one's measuring 1150, 54. Ah. 1154. Let's see if we can push it back. Well, hold on, 1153. So that satisfied all my shooting conditions. I haven't had any bullet seat back. I haven't had any loose bullets. I didn't have to go through the crimp process. I didn't go through the flaring process. And guess what? No crimp cases. No crush cases. There you have it. So if anybody tells you how difficult the 357 cartridge is, I beg to differ. So hopefully you got something out of it. And y'all have a good one. Peace.